Okay, now, I had some questions about this one. So let's try and unpack what's going on. I will point out, by the way, that you see how, and please note this, see how there's two parts to this question? In the HSC, you will often get these sort of two-part questions. And in the first part, they'll say, hey, can you prove this? Here's a number. You should be able to get there. Can you demonstrate how you do that? However, part of the reason why they're doing it this way is they've broken one question into two pieces. So that if you screw this up, that's okay, because you can still take this and use it in the next part, even if you really have no idea how to do that. Okay, and some people looked at it and were like, I was very confused. Let me show you the way that I did it, okay? Do you remember, I'll just put this on the board. Do you remember that we said there are two ways of working out loading, okay? And they both work, but one is quicker than the other. If I earn, say, $500 over the course of my 4 weeks, right? And that's my normal wage, I can say, well, what is the loading on top of this, okay? And if it's 17.5%, I will multiply by 17.5%, and that'll give me some number, okay? I'm guessing it's like, I don't know, it's unknown, something like $80 or something like that. Okay? Now you would then take that $80 and you'd say, well, I want the whole income, right? So I would say 500 plus that 80, and that's going to give me the total amount. Now the total amount is important to me because you can see up in purple there, that's the piece of information that I know, right? This is actually the piece of information they've given me, and I need to be able to sort of backtrack through here. Okay? Now that was method one. Method two was quicker, but you have to think a little more, right? Instead of saying, do the loading and then add them together, you can just start with your original amount and you can multiply it by a percentage that has the original amount and the loading together. Do you remember what that was? Instead of just 17.5% by itself? Yeah, I'm going to multiply by 117.5%. The 100 represents the original amount, and the 17.5% represents the extra that gets added on. And that should, if we do our numbers right, it should equal the same amount. Okay? And the reason why I'm pointing this out is because the second method clearly helps you more when you're trying to go backwards. Do you see this, right? Because here, you've got to go backwards through 2 steps, but here, you just have to go backwards through 1. So instead of multiplying by 117.5% like I did here, I'm going to divide, and that should give me the number directly. Question?
When I did that, right, I just did like, I times 500 or I did something, and then I did 17.5%, and then I took that number away from the original
Did you get the number?
I don't know, but that's not the question. My question was when I did, I think I did 2408 or something times 17.5.
Yes.
And then the second time I went back and did 0.5, and they gave me 2 answers.
Yes. Yes.
But
I'm so glad you mentioned.
But half is 0.5.
Yeah. So let me try and explain what's going on. At least if I understand correctly. Is this what you wrote at some stage?
Yeah.
Okay. So I want you to all see why this is. It sort of makes sense, but then it leads you to problems. It leads you to the wrong answer. Do you notice that this is the final amount? This is where I ended, right? So it doesn't really make sense to think about 17.5% of this number because this is after the 17.5% has already been added on. Does that make sense? So when you do this, you're treating the $2,408.28, you're treating that as the original amount, the normal pay without any loading. But look, it's already got loading in there, right? So therefore when you apply this, it's like loading on loading. So that's why it gets confused. You'll get a different number out here and it won't work out. It won't work out. You'll try to add the 17.5% back and you won't end up at this number, okay? So that's why I think probably the most direct way is the way that I've shown here, okay? You want to take that whole amount and what it represents is 117.5%, right? It's the original amount and the loading as well. You divide through, you'll get to that number straight away. Okay? Now, one just quick note, because I saw some people were doing this and it's fine. There is one other way to do this question. It's pretty similar. Sandy, if you wanted to try and do this 17.5% thing, here's the way you would do it. Because they tell you it should be this. This is what the original pay should be. You can multiply that by 17.5%. And you will get, I don't know, 350 or so, okay? And then if you add that on, you should arrive at the number that they've provided to you. That is fine. That also is showing that then without loading, will give you that amount. It's absolutely valid, okay? I think this way is more direct, but that's okay. There are many parts to a question.
So if you say what 17.5% is of the total amount, it's all right?
Yep. So I guess the way I would expect to see that is I would say loading equals 204960 times the 17.5%, and that will give me a number.
Yes.
And then I will say total pay equals the 2049 and 60 plus whatever that loading was that you worked out, and that number should be the 240828. That is what we are expecting, right? So as required, that's what I would say. Like I said, that's fine. You get there, but do you see? It's like it's a bit circuitous opposed to this. So.
What happens if they did like 117% times 249.6?
This one? Yeah, that's okay. Equals that? That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, that's equivalent. Okay. So what I am looking for though, what would really help is if there's some kind of language that explains what's happening. So, Jess.
I so I used the 2049 and I times it to show that.
Yep. Yeah. So that's fine. That's okay. However, like I said, if all you're having is numbers there, like you're starting, and you'll see this for the later question, you're starting to go away from showing and demonstrating that something is the case, right? I want an argument that demonstrates you understand what the differences are between all of these numbers, right? That's why, can you see, I start right out the gate and say the wages without loading are, and then I demonstrate I know exactly what I'm talking about. As opposed to, is that number with loading or without loading? Like that's kind of what's being assessed, okay? Okay, great questions. Let's move on. The next bit is less complicated. You can see I've elected to do it in 2 steps, just so again I can demonstrate exactly I know what I'm doing. So yes,
is that one right or wrong?
It's not 1 or 2.
Yeah, that's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, I would prefer to see some words there that indicate I know what I'm doing. Like, what is this number I'm supposed to end up with? Like, and what it is the total pay. So that would be helpful, but I think it's okay. I think it just skirts the border. Okay, so I just came back. I've worked out the weekly rate first because it's 4 weeks, and then I work out the hourly rate. Okay. Part of the reason why is just so my calculator doesn't get too confused when I do 2 divisions in a row.
Oh, I did the first number by the hours and then I did weeks.
Yeah,
That's fine? Yep,
so
that works too.
So you could have done 42 times 4.
Yeah, and like I said, that works because you know what the number is, right? Were the question to say hence or otherwise, find the hourly rate, you'd probably only be able to do it this way, if that makes sense, because you don't know what the hourly rate is. Alright? But both ways are fine. Okay, now let's have a look at the very last question. So, here we go. Now, this is a 3-mark question. 3 marks. And you can kind of see, just by the way I've set it out, you can see where the 3 marks are. You see that? By the way, let me just make a note, not that I would expect you guys to have done this already, but if you go look at an HSC paper, right, this kind of question comes up all the time, right? This is what this course is about. There's all of this numbery stuff here, I'm going to get this out of the way. All this numbery stuff, and then someone draws a conclusion, right? And the question is, are they right or wrong, and why? Because that's why we're using maths, so we can work out who's right and what the right answer is, okay? So, is she right in thinking that the, which option did she want? Is the no retainer option, the higher commission, right? So the 3 marks are for, you can see them here. In fact, let's have a look. So the first thing is, you've got to work out, well, what are each of the incomes, right? Like with or without the retainer, and that's 2 separate pieces, right? So I'm expecting 2 marks there. Someone has to work out both of them. There's no way to avoid it. The third and final mark is for actually answering the question. You wouldn't believe how many people will do these 2 things and then just stop, right? Because they're like, well, in the textbook, all I ever had to do was just calculate the actual income, right? You're expected to draw a conclusion. Here it is, right? And I'm going to use words. I think that's the easiest way to do it. The better deal is to take the lower commission. So unfortunately, she's wrong. And here's why. Here's my justification. She's going to earn this, take away this, more if she takes the option with the retainer. Okay, it's a small margin in the scheme of things, but it's still better. Okay, so I'm expecting some kinds of words here. If you weren't sure how to word it, well, here you go. Here's a way you can word it.
Would it be better just to say first option because setting you earn $750 more than option 2?
Yeah, that's fine. Though I guess I would just be careful when I say first and second.
Yeah.
I think it's easy just to say, like, identify which one it is. Not just because it could change order, but just so you know, which one have I said, you know? But yeah, unfortunately she's drawn the long conclusion, which lots of people do, and here's the maths of one. Okay?